Now, we have the last panel discussion for the day. So, the topic is all about HR leadership in the age of digital transformation, strategies, and best practices for success. So, let me take this opportunity to introduce our moderator, Mr. Rohan Sabnis, VP Sales, Growiz.ai. Mr. Rohan is the VP Sales at Sharpcell, leading three critical functions that drive revenue, sales, demand, and key account management. Part of the founding team at Sharpcell and drove the revenue to 5 times in the last 4 years, taking care of hiring, setting up all the revenue functions, and drive growth in new industries, closing deals with high premium over the competition. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist, Ms. Aparna C, CHRO, Tory Harris Integration Solutions, Mr. Kiran Shetty, founder and CEO, H Factor R, Ms. Tanaya Choudhary, VP HR Genpact, Mr. Roydon Gonsalvez, Senior Vice President, Head of Talent Management and Development, APAC Northern Trust, Ms. Sujatha Muthanna, Head Infosys Learning Advisory Infosys, Ms. Arti Sharma, VP HR Schneider Electric, and last but not the least, Ms. Vineeta Cherion, Global Head Talent Management and Leadership Development Emphasis. So let's welcome the ladies and the gentlemen on the dais with a big round of applause.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Uh, so the last panel, and just before the final award session, I think we try to keep it light and we try to keep it slightly short, and also maybe a bit practical. So these are a few things that we're discussing. We're going to introduce all the panelists with an interesting question today. Before that, when we met all of us together, and the big question was, how did all of us get into HR, right? And turns out it's like different things that have brought all of us to HR. Digital is of course shaping the way that life is changing today, as well as organizations are changing today. And while most processes are also now shortening, getting more efficient and so on, there's a big impact on how it affects humans and how humans utilize it. So while our topic is a bit generic, we wanted to kind of add a very flavorful feel to it. My first question to all the panelists, just to get us all introduced, is going to be they're all going to talk about one example from their personal life, where which is a combination of the digital and the human touch. Either a boon from the technology that they're using in their life, or something that technology can never replace, and human touch is still much more significant. So I think I'll just start with every panelist one by one. Just maybe that personal example. Would love to add that personal flavor to this discussion. Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure this is the last panel, so hence, please don't fall asleep or just don't wait to go home. I'm sure you will find all of us a little more interesting. So thank you so much, Rohan, for asking that question. So here is what, right? There was a time when we didn't have the Ubers or the Olas or the private taxis when we land or when we have someone coming home, right? What would we do? We would make arrangements and go to the airport or the railway station or the bus stand to pick them up. I happen to do that even today. Maybe not for everybody, but for a few people who really matter to me. That I continue to do. So, yeah.
Hey, hi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kiran here. For me, in this age of never-ending video games and all of that, right? Okay, I always try to spend as much time as possible with my son. Okay, we play cricket. Okay, so I don't think that can be replaced by video games. Okay, you really cannot. You don't get that emotions when you take a catch, when you get out, when your son leaps in the air. I don't think that's going to be replaceable at all. Okay, I think that's something that I would wanted to quote. Yeah, thanks.
I think very similar. And in fact, what I realized is when you have a cell phone around, right, or a laptop around, you have so many notifications coming and you are completely distracted. So in the weekends, what I ensure, I switch off my phone for, say, a good 2-3 hours. And I spend that quality time with my husband and my 10-year-old daughter. So that's what I do. And it really helps me.
So my name is Arti, and I'm HR in Schneider Electric for the digital and technology skills. I think my story is mix of, or I will say my experience mix of everyone what we said. I'm from mountains and I love skiing. And when I'm like, we are working outside mountains we don't have a jobs, right? So whenever in winters I want to see skiing happening, I think our beloved mobile always help me. So some people sitting there always share with me. But at the same time, when I have an opportunity to go there and see it with my eyes, I think that makes me a lot more connected. So this is the difference I feel the digital has made in my life. At the same time, I'm enjoying myself. And I'm also aspiring to reach to that level where I can have a connect to that. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon and great to be here. For me, I think for me, birthdays are very important, especially of close ones, friends, and so on. So the way that I use digital is obviously to put notifications. I just, whoever, like close friends, family, ensure that it's all there. But that said, for me, a WhatsApp message, a birthday wish, for me, it doesn't do the trick, right? So I ensure that I'll just pick up the phone. If the person is in the same city that I am, I will definitely meet. But otherwise, we'll try to personally, wish the person. So that is for me, a thing that I do, and I hope to continue.
That's lovely, Vineeta. This is Sujatha Muthanna here. Again, about celebrations. It's been many years that as a family, there is this concept of buying something from the store and giving it as a gift for a family member is something that's just not okay. And it really brought out a whole lot of creative juices in the family. So my son, I have a 21-year-old, so it's very difficult to convince him to get away from anything to do with the digital media or anything where there is an influence there. But it's really helped because he's come out with these beautiful scrolls that he did with things that were low fidelity, all right? So, or this time around, he came up with a box of memories which had beautiful pictures that were stored in a very, very creative way, right? And with some kind of a background music playing when we were listening to it. And the point is that it's very easy to pick up something from the store or lean on some of the ideas that you get from probably the chat GPT or put some digital media together. But the idea is if it has to come from the heart, and I believe that a lot of such celebrations is about coming from the heart, right? If we follow it, and as parents, when we do that and we don't, make sure that, yes, you're going to get your gifts some other time, but on your birthday, it's going to be something that's very special and from the heart. So this is something that I've seen makes a big difference to stay away from the digital influence, which is good in some way, but in this case, it's more from the heart.
So I have a very simple practice. So my digital detox moments actually involve going to the ATM at least once or twice in a month, typing in my PIN so that I don't forget it, withdrawing that money, and then using it at vendors where I have to use the full 100 rupee note or a 500 rupee note, because trust me, if you are not able to give them the change, you'll get dirty looks.
Thank you everyone for sharing those examples. I wanted to share an example as well, and it's kind of an opposite example where, I use an AI-powered coach. I talk to it daily. I'm very against, not against, but my experience of real coaches has been that the business model is slightly skewed. The longer that they continue to do the same thing for you, they make more money. So I've moved to an AI-based coach, and I'm much more opening up to it. Though I know my data is going out somewhere, I don't know who it's going to. So I think that helps. So that's a positive example of where digital transformation has led for me personally. So I think with that, I want to get into the topic. I'll obviously be asking each of our panelists some questions, but just to keep it interactive, if there are any real examples that from what the panelist is talking about that some of us have seen here, or any questions at that point of time, we would request people to raise hands because we don't want to keep questions at the end. So I think it's just a way for us to make it slightly more interactive. Perfect. So with that, I'll maybe start with my first question to Aparna. So Aparna, how can HR leaders drive digital transformation? So digital transformation, again, what is digital transformation? I'll leave it to you to decide. How you've driven it in the organization in the past. and what is the HR leader's role? Because of course people are going to go through a lot of change, and there's a mental aspect to it. So I wanted to hear about how does an HR leader manage this whole journey?
Thank you, Rohan. So I think here is what I'm going to do. It's not that, all of us don't have those answers. So I'm going to actually throw it out to the open and saying, if I could get one thing from you that you think a HR leader should do is not happening, please let us know. That's the way I would want to do it, right? It's not that, we all don't know, but I think it'll be nice to hear from all of you as well. Anybody in the audience who would want to tell us, please, the choice is, it's for you to tell us now. And then maybe I can add to it. Anybody? Ambassador. Ambassador? Thank you so much. Wow, I've got 2 answers already. Now do you see the power of having an audience with us, isn't it? So I think, thank you so much. Yes, an ambassador, as well as, the performance management. I would say yes, every HR leader has to believe in it, first and foremost. If they don't believe in it, we will never get it there. So thank you so much for saying being an ambassador. I would say all of us, be it in HR, be it an employee, be it in the management, have to be the ambassadors for the digital transformation. And I think that's also touched our own lives, isn't it? Thank you. So having said that, I'm going to share this example. Just, I think last Saturday, there was some round table, I was invited, went there. You won't believe it. The person standing there, he was talking about industries, I don't even know in which era he was, which didn't believe in digital transformation. Some of the things that he said was like, I will make anybody who's come to me for an interview, he said he would make them cry. I was like, what is this man trying to tell us? And I had to actually just walk out from that round table. It was that bad. So what am I trying to say is, recruitment is, I think, the first one that we would actually look at from a digital transformation, right? Today we have all the ATS, which is AI powered, which takes care of your screening, which helps us even even helps us take away the biases that we might have. So that's one. Very clearly, I think that's where we see, so what if someone has taken a break? Does that matter? No, it doesn't matter. And I think I have my own team members here who can vouch for that between us, it doesn't matter to us if you've taken a break or not. And we're more than happy to have you back. So, yeah, so that's just the beginning, right? From HR, that's the starting tool. Then over and above that, I think, what if you have to improve your customer service to the clients? How would you do that? You need to see what the employee has, what is the gap, right, that the employee is facing for him to do a better job at the customer service. So that's where we bring in all that digital transformation. Yeah. So, by the way, I'm sure most of the things have already been covered from morning till evening. Otherwise, we're going to repeat the same thing. Yeah. So having said that, I'm going to pass it on to the next one. Thank you so much, Rohan.
Thank you. Thanks, Aparna. Okay, my next question is to Vineeta. So when there is a digital transformation, of course, there's a lot more that we're trying to do in different ways. There's obviously, depending on the business context, there's obviously a need for change and innovation. And doing this is not easy. It requires for us to build a culture. We had a lot of sessions again about culture, and a lot of things come as part of the culture. But the specific part of the innovation that's needed, in the culture to really drive digital transformation, where it's not just top down. Everyone can make suggestions, add value, and design their own process at a department level, perhaps, or at a team level. How can HR play a very strong role in that?
Sure. So before I get into this, I think, my previous boss continues to say, this is the most interesting time to be actually an HR professional, right? The amount of change and the role that we play, like, it's a joke, like, leaders expect a full stack HR professional and much more, right? Like, so that's the saying in our company. So now, again, to your question of specifically on innovation, what is the role? So I'll probably break it up into 3. So for me, I think one is the culture of the organization itself. Do we allow for employees to fail fast, fail safe? What do we, for example, and maybe I'll take an example. In my previous organization, I was working with Amazon. We used to have deal wins which were reviewed. But as a part of that, there were also deal losses and the learnings from it. So it's not about, hey, who lost the deal, but about, that safety net was there to actually experiment, to make mistakes. And finally, you learn from it, right? The other thing is, even before something is a success, do we reward the right behaviors, reward innovation, right? So that's one thing. And again, an example in my current organization, we did a AI hackathon again, where we crowdsourced ideas from all the employees. Now, the awards were actually that they were flown to the US, they were felicitated by the board. Now, it's a small thing, it's an idea, it's a hackathon, but again, you're rewarding the innovation, the thinking big and so on. So that's again on the culture of the organization. I'll very briefly talk about the structure, right? How do decisions make? Do we have that flexibility to get cross-functional teams together to solve a problem? Again, in my current organization, I work with Emphasis. We actually had something called Geek Cloud, where engineers can, apart from the work that they do, they can also take up packages of work, get money for it, which is apart from, again, the regular day-to-day work. And how was this conceptualized? It was in a learning program where there was a cross-functional team. It was on innovation growth mindset. So again, that's an example that at least it's a story in our organization. And very quickly, the third one is processes. And again, going back to the previous session, when we talk about digital transformation, as HR, are we in the previous decade where we are still relying on, say, archaic methods, or how do we up our game? I think these are probably three areas that, for me, make sense when you look at innovation.
Really love the point on, making moonlighting official. I think that's a way where, instead of hiding, what people do, how do you give them an opportunity to do it within the organization? That's a very strong retention strategy as well. Perfect. So I think we spoke about tools, right? So you spoke about application tracking systems. So a lot of digital transformation is typically led by different tools that we want to implement, and there is no dearth of HR tools these days. So some of the tools are for benefiting the people who use it, but a lot of them are for benefiting the organization or the top layer, and not necessarily the people who are using these tools. So wanted to understand from Tanya. In terms of how do we drive the adoption of these tools? A lot of new technologies that people are exposed to, they are expected to, kind of shift the way they work, and the benefit is not always communicated to them well. And in some cases, the benefit is not there. So, could you just point some light on this?
Absolutely. And, before everything, I think as both my friends Aparna as well as Vineeta talked about, right? It's all about building that mindset, right? Because I always believe, and mindset comes from the intent. I commonly say this, that when you have the intent, content will automatically come. So, and that is why it is very important for us to first acknowledge that change is here and now, and we all are a part of this change, and how we are able to not only change ourselves, but drive the organization for change. Now, coming to digital tools, right? Many times when we implement design tools, we forget the user-centric design aspect of it, okay? We really, whenever we are designing any digital implementation for our organization, we really need to think, who is using that system? And then when we do a design, I really have to put my user at the heart and at the center. Okay? And that is what will drive adoption. I'll give you an example. So currently I'm in Genpact. And before that, I was 17 years working with Wipro. So pre-COVID, I think at that time, organizations were not thinking so much digital, especially in the field of learning and development. But Wipro and Vineeta, you might be aware, right? We started the Wipro People Manager program, which was a digital learning platform and e-learning modules, micro-learning involved. initially we faced a lot of resistance. In fact, from our own L&D team, my own peers, right, saying that we are so used to learning in the traditional classroom setup, and that's how learning happens. This will not work. But somehow we believed in the cause and we went forward. What helped us was we made sure that as a part of the design, the learner who will be using the application, who will be consuming the learning, that those inputs are being taken at every stage of the design process. I myself attended, a good amount of time in a design thinking workshop just to understand how designs actually happen. Well, I was from the L&D or the HR team, but I was working very closely with the design team. And not only the content design, but the system design, the workflow design, everything happened keeping the learner at the center of it. And once one pilot we did, the people who actually went through the learning program became our brand ambassadors. So whenever we implement digital tools, I think it is very, very important, one, user-centric design, and second, create brand ambassadors who will be speaking about that brand for you. For us at Wipro at that point in time, the first batch of the first-time people managers or the Wipro people managers were our brand ambassadors. So they went and, rather than we or the business leaders talking about the program, they went and started speaking to their peers that why don't you go for this? And eventually when I was leaving Wipro, and I was so proud that almost 5,000 people had gone through this 6 months digital learning journey. So that is how we saw adoption. Second is, right, whenever we implement digital tools and systems, we really need to understand where exactly, at what time we will bring the human interaction. Yeah. Like, for example, say in Genpact, my Genpact colleagues are here and they can vouch for it. We have a very beautiful tool called Amber. So what it does is, it's an AI chatbot. It talks to our employees and feeds us back with data and insights. So obviously as HR partners, we will not be able to cover, lakhs of employees that we have. But the tool enables that. But what we as HR partners do is that whenever we see a red flag coming, saying that some employee is saying that I'm burnt out, or one of the employees is saying that harassment, or anything where we see an alarm bell ringing, we get into the job, that an HR person or the manager will make sure that we are talking a meaningful conversation with the employee, and that is where that human part comes along with the tool. Similarly, performance management, right? We had a very beautiful session just now. So the tool is enabling us, like in the tech organization in Genpact, all the parameters. Like, for example, for business leaders in an IT services setup, typically we measure people on revenue, margin, ESET and CSAT, and various other sub-parameters. So all these are coming from the system. So as a mirror, at any point in time, my business leaders and their leaders are able to see, okay, these are the performance parameters and this is where you score. So we call it the scorecard. But based on these data points, and the manager will be able to have a meaningful conversation with the employee. Yeah. So here again, tool on one side, and along with the tool, a human interaction. I think when both these things go hand in hand, one aiding the another, I think the adoption will increase. So that's what I wanted to add on.
Thank you. Just to make this a bit more interactive, I think adoption is a challenge of tools, that people can really relate to. So would anyone from the audience want to talk about a tool where we have faced some real challenges driving adoption? And maybe I'll let the panel address maybe a few tips that we can drive adoption with. I think that would be a good idea. Anyone? Everyone here is able to drive all the digital tools that they have acquired. Wow, that's a good sign for me and Kiran. No one?
How many of us use Chat GPT every day? Yes. There you get your answer.
Yeah.
They've adopted it.
No,
But how did we even think of adopting? Did we even say, oh, should I use it? Is it going to take away my job? I'm sure a lot of content folks would have thought that it takes away the job, isn't it? But actually it only helps you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. Maybe I'll kind of pose a challenge on behalf of the audience. CRMs, right? Most salespeople are used to CRMs. CRMs are a way where the organization has to collect information from the ground and obviously, fix leakages. So typically, there is nothing in it for the guy on the. Okay, sorry. There's nothing in it for the guy on the ground who has to fill maybe 20 to 30 fields of each person or each interaction that they had with the customer. And practically, what we've seen happens in most cases is only the information or the prospects, the leads that are going to go forward in the process are usually filled in at the last minute. So your theoretical conversion of how many people met versus how many people will buy the product is always much higher than what it really is. And that's obviously happening because we're not getting all the data. So maybe that's a quick question where the benefit to the person is not direct. Let's say, unlike something like Amber where it's built for them, how do we drive adoption for something that the organization needs from them? Would anyone on the panel maybe like to?
Gamify it. For us, what has worked is to gamify some of those tools. There's definitely a reward, coupons and all of that, but also visibility. So look at the levels of motivation that it hits. It is also about giving them some kind of tokens, but it's also about creating the visibility for them and also giving them some kind of an exposure as to what happens beyond this. With the visibility, is there something that they can work with the leadership on? Because these are all things that actually make a difference to the individual in the organization, the corporate setup. So there were certain things, and this entire thing was about gathering these inputs from the employees themselves to see what is going to be meaningful for you. And if we have to really make it meaningful, we need to put our heart into it when we ask that question. Because once they tell us what is meaningful for them, and if we are not able to do it, it's going to hit badly, right? So this entire thing of gamifying and making sure that engagement is constant and the handshake is not just at a business level, at a financial goals that need to be achieved, but it's also at the heart level, right? To empathize with them, to understand where they're coming from and what is it that we can do together and collectively for the organization, for the individuals, and at a later level, at a later stage, it's also at a community level. How does it all pan into all these different, areas? Yeah, that's something that kind of worked for us.
Thank you.
The particular example that you took, Rohan, I think it's more of a UI UX issue, right? I think it's a design problem, right? So look at it from that lens and you'll solve it.
I'm not sure I'm convinced, but.
So here is what I think Lalit will also agree with me. Lalit is here and we are part of the same organization. So I know we've used one tool which kind of helped us where we were looking at somebody who was little detailed oriented. So we found actually an external organization which helps us, it's a gamification that they do, and it actually helps us find somebody who's detailed oriented till the last mile. Oh, it was that good. I loved playing that game. So.
I mean, not gamify, literally gamify.
It is literally gamify. This is like, if you see two pictures and say find the differences, this was something similar on those lines but digitalized. And I was like, yo.
Aparna, just one counter argument towards this whole gamification piece, right? See, I know how many of you have played games here, and I'm sure all of you have played. Now, how many games have you played continuously after completing the last level? Right? There is a certain threshold, right? And I think that's the problem with gamification. If you try to overuse it, or once you reach the threshold and once a person has had that satisfaction, yeah, I won this level, right? To get them to come back and do the same thing again is something where you lose them.
I'm going to look for different people all the time.
But just in response to that, but I don't know how the teenagers manage. They hold on to a game and continue on and on.
They continue different games and different levels in the same game, not the same level in the same game.
We'll land up buying all the games that they need.
Trust me, if you're going to gamify every element, most of your budget will just go in gamification.
I think it's more probably it's a combination of both UI UX and being addictive. Okay, so I think that works, I suppose.
Perfect. So moving on, so we spoke about a lot of tools. and we need to take some actions based on the tools. I think we got a few examples where what Amber is saying, people are hearing, and it raises a red flag, and hence something has to be done. Something in the real world has to be done based on what tools are finding. And this information is, most tools today have very detailed analytics. So my question to Arti, to help us understand this is, there is so many tools and so much analytics available. In fact, when we sell tools, the decision makers ask us the word, right? Is this possible? Can I slice data this way? Can I do this? And so on. And usually after a month, it's like, give me adoption. Are people using it? I'm good with it. So, where there is so much data available, how do you regularly look at the right information, identify patterns, and actually ensure something happens based on that?
So I think this question is very important from a HR fraternity point of view, because data is a bread and butter for us, right? So all the decision what we are taking, which is rightly taken, is based on the data. At the same time, and we have a similar situation inside our company, we have a number of tools, because we are working in a very global environment, different global countries are having different kind of setup, and they try to align at one point, but the input is coming very differently, right? But I think how it is important from a people point of view, when we see the data point of view, that then you are making any business strategy, you are going into the tools or you are gathering the data from some source and making sure their complete workforce planning is taken care, right? And when we are looking into the workforce planning, and which is, I'm saying, very high level right now, a couple of topics which is non-negotiable from a people point of view or HR point of view, is how to create a strategy around it, how to make sure that the input we are getting on the hiring side, input we are getting on the retention side, input we are getting from how many people are already developed inside the organization, and the data coming is from some source, right? And that data is making a lot of difference when we are working on our workforce planning together with the business, right? So that is one area which we have to pick and choose those tools which is important from a business point of view, first of all, because we are partnering the business. Second is, for me, I think that is very important, is how to develop the talent. And when we are talking about talent management, if I have to start seeing 30,000 people in India, and just to make it out that I now have to find out the skill which is available from a talent point of view, and the people, those are required to be fast, growth, and how to use them, whom to develop. I think it is tool which is going to give you the data. Because every year we are doing talent review process, but if you are doing even 1,000 people, you are doing review in a 1 year, it's difficult for us to learn as a HR, because HR is not 1,000. We might be a small team, right? So we need a data which is going to back up it. And when we are looking into that data, we are making sure that how many people are, if I have to say talent, they are into the large boxes. And what are the interventions we have done for them in the last 1 year? What are the promotions? All those things. I think we have everything which is hire to retire as we are having, right? So talent is playing a big role for us. And that's where tools plays a very important role. And we have to pick and choose those areas where we are getting full insights from a talent point of view. Talent availability, talent growth, talent learning, and how we are building them. I think that's important for me point of view, right? And in our Schneider also, we are using AI. We have open talent market, which is available around the world, where we are publishing all our projects internal, and people can go and pick and choose and learn from them. But that is again stored somewhere as a data. All positions around the world is published there. If I want to apply, I can go look for a position which is more closer to my experiences, I can apply for that. But again, this data is also throwing us back as a management that how many people applied, how many people seen those documents, how many people have gone through and they have shown the interest. That also gives us a more understanding to create a strategy at the global level, right? So that's another point which is I always feel it is very important for HR person as a people manager. And third, probably, I think I will just take 3 right now. It was on the skill development. And today, if you ask me, we are sitting in a country where competency is the key, right? Everywhere global is seeing us as the best skill setting, technical skill setting is in India. And not in technical, I will say, HR is also here, right? So that's how I see to it, right? So how to build those competency, how to analyze those competency. There are a lot of tools available right now. Internal, people are creating themselves, external available. But I think picking up the right tool and getting the data from there and building our talent is also important. So I think I'll just touch upon these 3 topics, but I think getting data not internal, but getting data from external is also important. So benchmarking outside, there are a lot of organizations, those are providing you insights, right? They are giving a comparative what is happening in the market from the compensation point of view, from a policies point of view. There are data points coming, like if I have to make a telephone or a users policy for my team, so how sales is doing, other organizations are doing, I think data is available. So we have to pick and choose those data points which is going to really strengthen our HR or people management roles, So that's how I see data is most important. At the same time, how to pick up the tool to make it digitized more, I think it's going to help us long way and sustainable. Thank you.
Thanks, Arti. So quickly, I think we heard picking the right tool from an analytics point of view and maybe from a usage point of view. So maybe from that angle, Royston, if you can shed some light in terms of DEI. We heard DEI a lot today. So diversity, equity and inclusion. How do we ensure that all of this is being taken care of when we implement some of these new digital strategies and drive adoption?
Cool. So how many D&I folks in the room? Anyone who, okay, so we have a few. And how many HR folks who wear the D&I hat? The same folks. Okay, cool. All right, I'm no expert in D&I, so feel free to pitch in. Now, just for the purpose of me answering this question, let's define digital transformation, okay? So digital transformation, see, every organization is a digital organization. Everyone agrees with me, right? Right from the guy who's selling fruits on the street, he's also a digital organization, isn't it? He may be using UPI, tomorrow he may want to use a 5G-enabled credit card machine, right? So technology is no longer a differentiator. Does everyone agree with that statement? So what is the differentiator then? It is the people, it is the talent, right? So why is D&I a very important aspect in HR? Because we don't want to miss out on the talent just because we don't have a workplace that is inclusive and it's diverse, right? Now, coming to answer Rohan's question, I think from a D&I perspective, there are a couple of aspects I think that we should all do as an organization. One, I think that's why I just asked how many of you are wearing the D&I hat as well. I think the way the D&I function itself is structured is something we need to really look at, right? Because if almost anything, every change that we do within our organization is digital and it's some kind of a transformation, isn't it imperative that we have more consultants in the D&I space embedded within business? Or are we going to continue to look at HR folks to support the function? Right? So that is one aspect we need to look at structurally. The other aspect is right at the top of the house. See, I think it's very important that D&I is embedded within the organization's values and cultures, right? Now, if you're a startup, you could easily do that. But I know some of us are in organizations which have been around for decades and centuries, right? It's not easy to suddenly say, okay, I'm going to add D&I into my value or into my cultural behavior, right? So the second best option that we can look at is look at your strategic goals, which get revamped almost every year, right? Or once in 2 years. So you can look at introducing D&I as a key aspect of your corporate goals. So what that does is it gets cascaded through the KPIs, through performance objectives, and for the C-suite, you can even look at setting certain targets, and just not a tick in the box, something more meaningful, right? Now, a couple of aspects I think we need to watch out for, and some of you have been exposed to the US firms. You would know what's happening in the US. There's a lot of backlash towards D&I, right? So I think it's an opportunity for us here in India as well to just relook at what we've been assuming as D&I and see if there's an opportunity to kind of relook at what we mean as D&I, key core D&I aspects, right? So the other thing that I think we should look out for is with AI emerging and coming into influence all digital transformation projects, I think it's imperative that we look at the quality of the data, because the data that we might have could be biased, right? So if we could look to keep an eye out and look to eliminate some of that bias that is there in the data, I think that will go a long way.
Thank you. Okay, so we are reaching towards the end of the time, but I have 2 questions left, so I'm maybe going to request to cover them slightly quickly. My first question to Kiran is more in terms of, we spoke a lot about different tools, and we spoke about, people wanting to implement digital. So just wanted to understand a bit on, if someone who is that one person who is not digital first today, and who's wanting to go digital, what strategies would they kind of, how would they go about it?
Yeah, thanks, Rohan. Before I answer these questions, I think before we actually get on to a digital transformation program, okay, the strategies, there are 2 parts to it, okay. One is, even before you decide, okay, I'm going to go implement a certain tool, okay, there has to be an intent. Like I liked Tanaya when she said the intent has to be very clear, right? So when you're going to implement a certain initiative, okay, you need to understand, okay, like, are you going to do it because it's going to serve a certain purpose, meaning in terms of utility, I would say, right? Or are you going to just tick a box to fill your KRA, right? So you need to be very clear about that. Okay, so if it is not even coming close to fulfilling the intent part or the utility part, I think it's going to end up as a failure. Okay, most probably, I'd say. Then. I think once that intent is very clear, because see, the leadership or the management wouldn't go searching for what needs to be implemented. Okay, it's people on the ground, like the CHROs, the HR leadership would want to really understand what transformation would be required and all that, and they may get inputs from their own teams or from different teams saying that there is a need to bring in an intervention now, right? So when they do that, okay, and the leadership has to be convinced as well, okay, and I think the propensity has to be achieved with the leadership and the management also, where they understand that, okay, this initiative, okay, apart from giving you the expected ROI and all that, because that's what management will usually talk about, right? But then when the HR leadership is able to convince that it's going to fulfill a utility, okay, it's really going to make people use it, okay, and there is obviously a very clear ROI that can be achieved, I think then it kind of sets the right direction, it sets in the right direction, right? That, okay, it's going to hit the right target, you've aligned your leadership along that particular direction, and you're going to start implementing it. Now comes the second part, okay, so now the first part, it's like documentation, if you want to call it documentation, okay, it's like documentation, right? So now comes the second hardest part, which is execution, right? So this is where most of the digital transformation initiatives see a huge challenge, okay? When people would go in for the best of the solutions in the market, right? But when it comes to execution, okay, that's the hardest part. And I'm sure in your own experience, in your own journey, HR journey, you would have come across a lot of such challenges, okay, which you would have seen yourself, right? So that's where I probably think the HR as a strategy, I think taking everyone along the way, okay, that makes a lot of sense. When I say taking everyone along the way, I mean to say identify the key stakeholders who are going to be part of the project, the particular initiative, and anybody from project management would know the power and the interest grid, right? So somebody who's got a high influence or a high interest, high power, okay, you need to manage them very closely, kind of thing, right? And that the 4 quadrants need to be looked at very closely. And then comes the governance part, right? I think execution is also all about governance, okay? I think once you're able to do that governance part very, very, very diligently, I think you're setting probably on a path to success there, right? Yeah, probably the bell rung, so I'll stop there. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, last question, and maybe I'll let Sujatha give a short response to this. So when it comes to driving employee engagement and productivity of the people on the ground, how does digital help, or is it a barrier? Is it a barrier? Could it be a barrier, or does it always help? And how do we drive it?
Okay, Rohan, actually, this depends on the organization's culture. Because if we want to have it as a tick-off activity, then we can just have an employee engagement activity. What we did in our organization at Infosys is to go back to the ground and ask people what their challenges were based on various experiences they had on campus, during their interactions with people, all of that. So whether it was a banking experience on campus or an onboarding experience on campus or a leader who was getting onboarded, what kind of experience they have. So it was very, very real. So people would come back to us and identify these really wild, wacky problems because it's very easy to find solutions, but it's very difficult to find the problem. So we actually created a culture in the organization to take inputs, which is when they started finding problems. But again, there's a productivity angle to that, right? So what did we do about it? We had a thought vault. So we started creating a thought vault and had a dashboard which actually showed the different kinds of challenges that were coming in for different functions within the organizations. And we also extrapolated it to the client engagements, the different segments that we were working on. So the dashboard helped in productivity, which is, one is to find the problem. The second one is how can we actually put a task force to start working on that problem. Again, something that was mentioned earlier, I think Vineeta, you mentioned it, the fail fast mindset had to kick in, which is, it's okay, you don't have to find this grandiose kind of a problem, a solution. It's okay to start small. Bite-sized solutions is okay. And that's the mindset change for a large enterprise such as ours, which is about 320,000 strong at this point in time. So when we started small, we started calling it a live enterprise, which is how can we start sensing what is happening within the organization, sense and feel it, before you start getting into execution mode. So it is about looking at the microcosm before you start trying to solve the macrocosm. And when you start looking at it from that angle, you're actually looking at the various aspects also involving people completely, and that's where the employee engagement happens. I remember for something, we were talking about gamification earlier. And this is something that I shared as an input. I'm a golfer. So for me, Ninja Turtles coming in as a badge, that didn't make any sense. So they actually put in things that were meaningful for me, which is a hole-in-one, a birdie, not an albatross. So, so those were things that were very important because how do you personalize these experiences, these employee engagement experiences, and how do you take it to scale? Because large organizations have this problem, or probably it's also an advantage of scale and pace. So bring both of them together at the same time, have an end goal to say, this is what your problem statements were, here is what it has converged into. And in many cases, some of the problems that were identified and solutions that we found within the organization, we have been able to take them as solutions to our clients. I saw this in, I think, Pfizer at the Basel office. Some of the solutions that we had created for them was put up there. And it actually made a lot of sense to say that how do you kind of extrapolate this entire thing and take it to a totally different realm? So these employee engagement experiences are not just within one enterprise, but it kind of resonates with a lot of other organizations as well. Yeah, so that's been our experience, Rohan.
Thanks, Sujatha. And thank you all panelists for adding our own layers to the digital transformation and the HR's role in it. And sorry, I think we meant for this to be shorter, but it actually went. But thank you everyone for staying back, and hope we added something to this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, our respected moderator and our panelists. So I request Mr. Rohan Sabnis to facilitate our panelists right now.